morning. Some may say it's from Mars, some may call it cheese sauce. It's a morning. You can put it in the lasagna tin, make it thick or thin, and do it your way. When you make bechamel and you add cheese as well, it's a morning.
You're listening to Rebecca Bowen with Quite a Stir on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Good evening, you're listening to Quite a Stir with Rebecca Bowen, and tonight I'm very lucky to have Chef Tom Martin of Bohemien in the house. Welcome to the show.
Hiya.
Bohemien is a pop-up dining concept focused on seasonal French-inspired food with a relaxed creative approach. It's about good ingredients, thoughtful cooking, and bringing people together around the table in a way that feels personal rather than formal. I have to shout out Joelle for sending you my way, so big thanks to you.
You're listening to Rebecca Bowen with Quite a Stir on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Welcome back to the show. That was Waterloo Sunset of the Kinks. We are joined with Chef Tom Martin of Bohemien. What is Bohemien?
All right, so Bohemien is a supper club that celebrates great French cuisine, Welsh and British produce, and generous hospitality. We serve set menus, so anywhere from 4 to 7 courses. We host several events each month across different venues across South Wales. So we have a regular residency at Moor in Barry, nice. So that's by Barry Island Spirits. We're regularly at Snell's Deli in Rubina, the Cross Inn in Cowbridge, Mora in Llandaff, and we've recently started sort of semi-regular residency at Full of Greys in Mumbles. Mm-hmm. We also offer private catering, so we go to people's houses, do bespoke menus for them. So that's Bohemien.
That sounds amazing. I didn't realise you offered that people's houses.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that. I love the pop-up concept. It's a way to cook more freely without the constraints of a traditional restaurant, isn't it? It allows space to explore ideas and create experiences that feel meaningful and not just ploughing out meals like a restaurant, you know. It's also about connection between food, the place, the people. You're travelling to their doorstep, including the Mumbles, beautiful surroundings that you get to pick and choose, right? I love that.
Yes, definitely.
What can people expect at a Bohemien event?
You know, we serve set menus, as I mentioned, so this is purely just because, I am the only cook. When you come there, I'm going to be cooking for you each and every time. Mm-hmm. So to make it run smoothly, we have the set menus. The menus are always seasonal, purely because when food's in season, it's at its peak. It's really down to that. It's no sort of marketing ploy or anything like that. It really is just common sense cooking, and that's really what I'm about. I source the best I can locally, but also slightly from further afield, so across the UK. So for example, at the moment, Forced Yorkshire rhubarb is excellent. It's banging season. Yeah. Citrus fruits are also great at this time of year. Mm-hmm. So between each course, I come out and interact with our guests. I give like a little brief explanation of each dish, which is always good for a laugh because I'm quite socially awkward. I'm not the biggest people person in the world, okay. But I think that's a symptom of being behind the stove for the last 15 years.
Yes.
And I also think with, I just want an evening where I hope people can come, relax, have a good time and eat some delicious food. I don't want to challenge people with the sort of food and the combinations. I stay very classic to the classical French flavours. I don't think people should have to try mad combinations, which you sometimes see.
Yes.
Things like tomato and basil, beef and red wine, mushroom and truffle. These are timeless combinations and ultimately will always taste delicious together as long as they're cooked properly and sourced well. That's sort of what you can expect at a Bohemian event.
Beautiful. It's a relaxed but considered experience. Seasonal ingredients, dishes that tell a story. It's intimate, welcoming and designed to feel special without being intimidating.
Yes.
I love that. How can people book an event?
So you can book all our events for 2026 on our website, so that's bohemien.uk. That's Bohemien. So many people think it's spelt the same as Bohemian Rhapsody. Yeah. Great song, but it's not all recorded. We also share booking links on our Facebook page and our Instagram at Bohemian Wales. when we get closer to each date. So you can book any event for 2026 on the website, but as we get sort of a month before, I sort of announce it, so it gives everyone else a little bit of a chance to get tickets. They do tend to sell quite quickly, but also once you attend an event, you automatically get added to a list where you get sent regular discounts, updates, and you sort of get to get a bit more information about what we do.
And whether you're young or whether you're old, you gotta come down and let Radio Cardiff rock your soul on 98.7 FM. Ramga, tell your friend. Tell your friend.
You're listening to Rebecca Bowen with Quite a Stir on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Welcome back to the show. We are joined with Chef Tom Martin of Bohemien. So tell us, why did you start Bohemien?
So I mean, firstly, I love and have a massive passion for French foods. I've been a cook for nearly 15 years now, and I've always wanted to eventually go out on my own and do this, as I think every chef and creative person wants to go and do their own thing. I am a bit of a control freak, so this worked perfectly for me. But again, I think every good cook is really. French food's kind of fallen out of favour, and I like to show people how delicious and beautiful it can be when it's done properly. I really love those classic French style of hospitality. When you go to those little bistros in France, those little cafes where it's almost like you're going into someone's house. It's a generous style of hospitality, and I don't just mean generous as in huge portions. I mean, like I said, we do 4 to 7 courses at our events, so we're mindful of that. But I mean generous in the spirit and the sort of the sharing and that really sort of passion that I think resonates with people. I mean, for example, our latest event down at the Mumbles at Full of Grays, we served a main course of a bration of beef. So it's braised for 6 hours in a huge mirepoix of vegetables, loads of red wine. We serve this with pomme aligot, which is a classic French preparation of potato where it's mixed with thom, which is a really nice type of cheese. It's mixed until you get this really decadent, rich sort of potato puree. We also serve this with a Bordelais sauce, which is loads of red wine, loads of bone marrow. Halfway through people eating, I was coming out and topping people's plates up. And I think that personal touch and that connection they get with myself, people really resonate with that.
Of course they do.
Which is strange for me because, like I said, I'm quite socially awkward. I'm sort of the stove goblin for the last 15 years. But it's that care and sharing that I really think is a universal thing that people enjoy. And also a large part of what Bohemien is about is a rejection of so much of the conventions of fine dining. That awkward service, flowers and microherbs on food. It's just not my style. I kind of call it cooking by numbers. You think painting by numbers, where you get a piece of lamb, for example, and you say, well, that goes with mint, that goes with this, so on and so forth. By the end, you've got a plate of 15 ingredients, and it just doesn't make sense. And I don't think people want that anymore.
No.
I think people really appreciate simple, good, honest food, where it's less about the chef's ego and it's more about come have a great time and just enjoy yourself. And also going home hungry. I mean, we always commented on that we give generous portions, and that's, I'm a big guy. I want people to leave full. The last thing I want is people going to McDonald's on the way home.
Starving.
Nothing against McDonald's, but I just want people joining us to have a great time, eat some really tasty food, leave happy. And if I've done that, I've done my job, and I'm a happy man.
Done your job perfectly as well.
Yeah.
How many chefs can say they come out and top food up? Whoa. Fair play, I'm loving that. Because events are small, they do tend to sell out rather quickly. I mean, I was lucky to get 3 tickets to your next evening at Mora, which I'm very excited about. I'm treating my nephew and his lovely girlfriend, and we can't wait. So if they're listening tonight, they're going to be thinking, oh, he's going to come out and top the food up. When you're not cooking at Bohemien, what are you cooking and eating?
I eat very simply. I share, you might have seen, I share recipes and cooking videos on my social media. This is a lot of the dishes that I cook at home. It's often braises, slow cooked dishes, low effort, high reward. And I think deep down, everyone really likes that sort of food. It's kind of universal. I grew up sort of working class on the council estate, and
Me too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that sort of food transcends class. It transcends where you're from, because everyone has fond memories of those simple food that their mother or the grandmother or the father might have cooked for them.
Cow.
Exactly, and that is universal wherever you go in the world. Mind you, as a commie chef, it would have been super noodle sandwiches at 1 a.m. with a glass or 2 of cider from the corner shop. High carb, high calorie food after a day of just tasting without actually eating anything, because to this day I can't eat a meal if I'm working, because you're tasting everything and it just bogs you down. But yeah, that's the sort of food that I cook at home. Just simple food, nothing fancy.
I love your blog. I just copied one of your recipes and I had some for tea before coming out. It was your boeuf bourguignon.
Oh, right.
And I had to actually look up the pronunciation of the cookout.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I would probably have said kotkochi or something. But yeah, I'm loving the beef bourguignon. Thank you for sharing your recipe and a how-to guide with a video. How many chefs actually share their secrets?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that. It was banging. Let's have our next track. It is This Must Be the Place, Talking Heads. One of my brother's favourites. Shout out to my brother.
Radio Cardiff, right about now.
Radio Cardiff, 98.7 FM.
You're listening to Rebecca Bowen with Quite a Stir on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Welcome back to the show. Loving your track selection, as is my brother up in Barguide. Shout out Lee and Sue there. Let me check. So, what can we expect from Bohemien in 2026?
So I think really this year it's more events, more dates, more venues. Like I said, we also do our private dining, which, you know, a lot of people are taking advantage of, which is great. And I think for me it's kind of freeing because when we're doing events, we're cooking for like 30 plus people. And again, I say the we, it's the royal we, it is me. Whereas when we're cooking at people's homes, you know, it's generally, you know, no more than 10 people. I mean, we're happy to do it, but when it's that size, you can technically just do so much more. You can really sort of go to town on the sort of classical techniques and really make it as sort of fancy as anyone wants it to be, which is nice, and also giving people that bespoke menu that they want. I really love that side of the business, but it's something that we're looking to sort of push more and you know, really sort of expand in 2026. But yeah, more events, more supper clubs. You know, I'm at a point now where, you know, I've worked in fine dining for most of my career. And I really truly believe at this point that the best food universally is simple, good ingredients, cooked properly. I can't say it on air, but our motto is more butter, less BS.
Yeah.
And I think that really like typifies, that explains our philosophy, because that's really the point I'm at now. When we started Bohemien back in January of last year, you know, I'd come out of that sort of the sort of blinkers that being behind a stove for that long in fine dining gives you, where you almost have that ego, and everyone's guilty of it, we all are. You know, I started out and we were doing 10-course menus all written in French.
Wow.
Which, you know, I'm sat there, oh, this is great, everyone will get this. And, you know, this is why I come out and talk to people at events, is because on that first dinner I kind of overlooked that people were just confused. You know, never mind the fact that they were, you know, struggling to finish the food because it was 10 courses. So I had to come out and talk to people, and that's really where that sort of reluctant back and forth with the guests. But I think it adds something. I think people really appreciate that. And when I tried to get back from doing that and sort of stay in the kitchen, people were like, where were you? We liked that aspect of it, which is nice, I suppose. But it's just, I always think in my head, you don't need some big ginger bloke coming over and asking, telling you about his sauces. But yeah, people like it, which is nice. It's always nice to hear.
They do, yeah. So you want new collaborations, continuing to evolve the concept while staying true to what Bohemien is about, basically. Creativity, seasonality, intimate dining experiences, beautiful creative cooking rooted in French technique.
Yes, definitely.
The French technique is still taught in all the schools up and down the UK, all over Europe.
Yes, and I think, you know, from working in restaurants, you see that those classic techniques that you're taught in college. I mean, I never had the luxury of going to college to do cooking. I mean, I started, you know, as a KP, as a dishwasher, and sort of worked my way up through, you know,
So
the last
impressive.
15 years. But I think, you know, honestly, and it might sound a bit cliche, that's kind of how the best chefs end up doing it, because college can only take you so far. I think, you know, really what you gain from working in a kitchen is, it's not necessarily learning how to cook, it's learning how to take pressure, how to deal with the hours, because you can't escape that. Cooking professionally is a lot of hours. It's hard work. It's, you know, it's demanding physically and mentally, you know, if we're all honest. But doing it, you know, actually on the job is great. But what you learn in college, those sort of foundations of mother sauces and the classic way of doing it, restaurants don't tend to do that these days. You know, I can't remember the last time I saw a bechamel being made in a professional kitchen. You know,
kidding me.
And you know, why are we not doing that? There's so much of that, you know, that massive encyclopedia of knowledge you get from France and that traditional cooking. That's why I want to bring it back with Bohemien, because ultimately there's a reason why it's foundational. It's because it's really, really good. And people should know about that. And you know, I don't want to sit here and preach. And I think when I go to events, I'm conscious of the fact that people want a nice meal. But also, I think if people can learn something, then it's even better. And why not? You know, yeah.
If they're not not doing it in restaurants? Why are we taught that? I recently finished the level 2 professional cookery, and I did all those sauces. So what was the point?
I think
what do they do?
Yeah, I think, there's so many modern techniques and stuff which are all good and they all add value. I mean, if you mentioned my blog, I mean, I talk a lot about.
I love your blog.
Yeah, I mean, that's very cathartic for me. As opposed to social media, where, because it is just me, social media, you've got the like counter and the comments and the shares, whereas the blog, there's none of that. I can just talk.
Yeah.
And even if I'm talking to myself, at least I'm talking. But I talk about the fact that so much of modern cooking, it's almost like the soul's gone from it. You see things like sous vide and stuff, and I totally understand it from a practicality point of view, from consistency, but there's so much of those classic techniques which are there for a reason. There's flavour. If you cook a piece of meat in a plastic bag and the thing, yeah, you'll get that consistency, but cooking it in a pan and building flavour and developing that's proper cooking. That's really where it's at. And if we can do that, then great. And that's really what Bohemien is all about, is that style of cooking.
Lovely. That is gorgeous. Shall we have our next track? It is Rebel Rebel by Bowie.
Radio Cardiff.
You're listening to Rebecca Bowen with Quite a Stir on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Welcome back to the show. We are joined with Tom Martin, Chef Tom Martin of Bohemien. How often are your pop-ups? I forgot to ask that.
So, I mean, for January we just did the one purely because it's January and nobody has any money. But generally it's 2 or 3 every month.
Brilliant.
And this will alternate sort of between how many courses you do. So you might, for example, have 1 4-course dinner and then a 7-course dinner sort of sandwich between another part of the month.
Nice.
Obviously, of course, we're still doing our private dinners between that, but yeah, so it's about 2, maybe even 3 a month generally. That's how many events we're doing.
That's lovely. And with the wine pairings?
So it really depends on the venue. Obviously, we don't have, as a pop-up, we don't have a license to sell alcohol ourselves.
Right.
But for example, Moore by Barry Island Spirits in Barry, they've got a massive wine collection. I mean, they are a wine bar, so it works great. So for example, there we do 7 courses for £50.
Nice. And
they pay an extra £15 on the day and they get 7 glasses of wine, which is, I mean, it's great value.
Unbelievable value.
Mora Llandaff, for example, as well. I mean, they've got a great wine offer in there, but generally most of the venues will do that. The Cross Inn in Cowbridge, for example, they get fine wines direct in, and they'll do like a full-on pairing with every dish, which, it's great for the guest, but it's really not my area of expertise, the sort of wine side of things.
So you give them the menu beforehand and then they do the...
So I'll give sort of tasting notes and a rough idea, but like I won't pretend that I'm an expert. I'm good at drinking it, but not...
I love that. Just now we were talking about if you get steaming you might do a karaoke. Go for it.
No
we don't
chance.
mind. Wish I'd brought a bottle of champagne now. Let's talk about nostalgia, childhood connection to food.
Yeah, I mean... So when I was quite young, my mother passed, and I lived with just my father for a few years in Bristol, where I was born, and love him to bits, not the world's greatest cook. However, he used to cook sprats. I don't know if you know sprats. They're like small sardines, which you never see anymore. We used to, I used to go rugby training as a child, and I'd come back and he would, we'd prep these little sprats, and it's quite graphic. Trigger warning: you have to take the guts out and give them a wash. But we'd flour them, he'd flour them, fry them, and we'd have it with like a nice thick doorstop slice of bread and butter. And that is just like such a core memory for me. And I think, like music, food really has that ability in people to, and then we moved over to Cardiff. My father remarried and she became my mother, which was great. Her cooking, so again, those sort of stews, those sort of slow cooking stuff, that's the stuff, as I said, that resonates with everyone. But yeah, like music, like films, I mean, anything that can sort of bring an emotion in someone, food has that power.
It does.
Like the music, I mean, I've chosen songs here because they all mean something to me. Yeah, so it's incredible the power that it can have on people.
It can, yeah. I love that. Give me examples of dishes from...
So, I mean, for example, if you were to take a 7-course menu, you might start with a salad. So, for example, anything that's seasonal. You might have a terrine So something, sort of selection of sort of cold dishes to start off with.
Okay.
You may have a soup. So for example, the latest event we've done is a 4-course. So on the 4-course dinners we go slightly bigger, so it's more akin to a sort of a la carte size. So for example, I might as well give you the example of the latest event we've done in the Full of Grays in January. So we started off with a caramelised cauliflower soup.
Oh, yummy.
Really very simple. You just caramelise it, loads of brown butter, more butter. It's just flavour, isn't it? We serve that with a really simple blodyn which is a really beautiful Welsh rapeseed oil.
Okay.
Which, again, I've mentioned it on the blog where I talk about Welsh ingredients that I love. We finished it with that, and we served it with sourdough that I make myself, and a sort of warm sort of spice butter. So it's vadouvan, which is a French spice blend. Very sort of those sort of warm, fragrant spices. We made a butter out of that. We served that with the soup.
Wow.
The fish course, we did a nice fillet of cod with some confit pieces of fennel, some blood orange. Again, blood orange is bang in season. So we made a really nice butter sauce out of that. Just finished it very simply. For main course, like I said, we did a bration of beef with a beautiful pomme à la go, which is, it's posh cheesy mash, but it's delicious. And a beautiful Bordelais sauce. Heavy on red wine, heavy on bone marrow, just all good things. And we finished it with the Yorkshire Force rhubarb, as I mentioned. So we finished that with a rhubarb frangipan tart, which we just serve very simply with a jam made from the trims of the rhubarb and some beautiful creme fraiche, which we finished with a little Anglesey smoked sea salt from Hull and Mon. So again, we the Welsh produce, we try and use it as much as we can throughout the menu. And I think there's definitely those little touches which, like the smoked salt, like the Welsh rapeseed oil, that can really lift the food. But yeah, that's what you sort of get at a typical supper club with us.
And that dessert sounds incredibly technical as well. And you've just learned through the ranks. You didn't do a pastry course, did you?
No. I think most, a lot of cooks aren't necessarily proficient at pastry. Personally, I think it's quite simple. I think we try and stay very classical. But again, my view on all food, but especially with desserts, is that simple is better. Everyone likes a really well-made tart. I mean, the next event we've got a caramelised lemon tart.
It's my favourite.
It's just simple.
And I'm coming to that, can't wait.
But it's just delicious. I think, we went... food in this country went through a phase where people were deconstructing things and picking things apart. And I get that, and I think a lot of that comes from a lack of skills in chefs, because unless you train in pastry, the skill set aren't there. And I myself have been guilty of it, but actually getting back to basics, just really classic things done very well, and it's approachable for people. And I think that when you try and take things too far, you can really almost scare people away with, like I said, different combinations and straying too far from the classical range. And for me at least, having that whole repertoire of French cuisine is really, really inspirational and almost comforting, because I can draw from all of that, whereas I think if I was to not have that base and that point of view to take from, I'd really struggle to sort of find that creativity.
Okay.
I think I would go in every direction, and you'd have a really sort of contrived, convoluted menu where you've got, all different cuisines, but having that base, like I said, really helps me at least be creative. But yeah, I mean, our 7-course dinners, actually, it's worth mentioning, we always do 2 desserts. So you'll have your sort of 5 savoury courses. So again, you might start with a couple of cold dishes, a soup, a fish course, a meat course, and then you'll have a pre-dessert. So that could be yogurt bavarois, which is a really lightly set mousse using Conwy yogurt. We might finish that with a jelly or a granita from something seasonal, like a blood orange at the moment, a nice fruit granita, and then we always, with the 7-course menus, I always try and put chocolate into it.
Nice.
Which is personally, I'm not a chocolate lover. But we always try, at least on the 7 courses, to give that chocolate hit, because again, it's what people want, and I think that's really important that we're doing that. Back last summer, we served a chocolate marquise, which is like a sort of set. It's like a brick of chocolate. It's the only, you can't really say it in any way that doesn't sound like rudimentary, but we slice this up, run a blowtorch over it, and it's just nice and shimmering and just set chocolate. We serve this with some boozy cherries, and again, it's just simple, but it's simple, tasty, and it hits the spot, and there's no pretense, and there's no micro herbs or flowers on it, which for me is great.
Amazing, and you can do all of that all by yourself. I'm very, very, very impressed.
You're listening to Rebecca Bowen with Quite a Stir on Radio Cardiff 98.7 FM.
Welcome back to the show. We are joined with Chef Tom Martin of Bohemien, and I think this is not just with you as well, but I love our behind the scenes chats. We're not going to tell you any of that, by the way, but I love our behind the scenes chats. Tell us about chefs who inspire you.
So I mean, the British food scene, the chefs has just come on leaps and bounds over the years. I mean, when I was coming up, I've always looked backwards. I mean, I'm quite a big fan of history and sort of seeing, I think you've got to know where you've come from to know where you're going. The sort of food scene in the 90s, albeit it was super hardcore, those chefs I think are really big inspirations for me. So Marco Pierre White is like my hero.
Everyone loves that guy.
Yeah, do you know what? Like him or not, and there's a lot of things he's done and said which you can, the way he treated his staff and, but actually, he was just so far ahead of everyone. And, the sort of chef family tree that's come from him. And the same with people like Pierre Kaufman as well, those dishes and those recipes, I think, they're really big inspirations for me and the sort of dishes that I come up with. But again, they're grounded in the classics. And I think, like I've said all the way through, that's the thing that I really want to push, is that it's all come from that classical base. In sort of more modern times, Sat Baines is a massive inspiration for me. In a Shire, which 2-star, soon to be 3-star.
Yeah.
Definitely. If they don't know what they're doing. Yeah. So Gareth Ward, who's the chef and operator there, he trained under Sat Baines, and loads of the sort of chefs that are really starting to get recognition now train under him. So he's got a restaurant in Nottingham. But again, his approach is very much no BS. It's very much flavour first and just doing things properly. I think, again, so much of food can be sort of smoke and mirrors, and because it's not hard to do a lot of that stuff, but actually to take the time to make all your own stocks, to do all your own butchery, to really deep dive into the produce side of things, that's really like the thing that I respect most. A lot of the chefs in the 90s and the sort of transition into now where food's become a totally different thing now. TV chefs, Jamie Oliver had a massive impact, and a lot of positive impact, definitely, because he changed and inspired a lot of people, like I suppose Delia in the sort of 80s and 90s before. Everyone thinks they know how to cook. Well, everyone does know how to cook in some respect now, but it's a totally different landscape now. Of course it is, yeah. And I think those are the chefs. Those chefs have really made that impact, and laid that foundation. So
rather than cut corners, which
and I think that's it. And it's always about working within your means. Again, I talk about this a lot on the blog. Work within your means, and there's no point in, I see a lot of people talk about organic food and stuff, and I totally get it and I agree with it, but people haven't got money.
It's expensive, yeah.
We've lowered all our prices this year. I mean, like I said, we'll do 7 courses for £50, and I get chefs asking me how we make money on that. All right, it helps the fact that we don't have a permanent base, so we're not getting knackered by the government on VAT and rent and things like that. But ultimately, it's got to be affordable for people. And I never want Bohemien to be exclusive. I never want it to be, like I said, I'm from a council estate. I'm from my background, and I don't want people who are also from that background to think that's unapproachable. I can't do that. And I think a lot of this, the organic food movement, again, it is great, but it's got to be. People have to understand that there's a cost involved in that. So
you've made it accessible for people like me.
Totally.
Which is fantastic. Would you offer a cooking class?
It's something I love to do. I wouldn't know where to start in building that and doing it. Like I said, really, outside of cooking, all this is quite new to me.
Okay.
Like I said, the social media and everything else, but it's something I'd like to do. I like the idea of it, definitely.
Maybe in one of the pop-ups, would they let you do it in?
Yeah, possibly. It's something that we could definitely look at.
I'm definitely coming to every class because everything we've talked about, you've just floored me. I'm so impressed. No. I'm incredibly impressed. What is your death row meal?
Oh, I don't know. It's a hard one. You stumped me there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's a hard one. Do you know what? I'd have those sprats again with my father. That would be the thing that but again, it's personal. I think it's I could come here and say beautiful lemon tart and a ribeye, but honestly, I think something that's more personal.
Yes.
And it's a rubbish answer, but I'll be honest, it's my answer.
It is a hard question. I don't even know mine. Engineer, what is your death row meal? Would that be something that your father cooked?
Certainly would be.
He was an amazing cook. He's from Grenadian family, but it depends where you're from, really, isn't it? Yeah. His dad used to cook like cow heel soup. He used to do pig souse, which is like trotters and everything, but they cook those meals really, really, really well.
Again, like we talk about Nose Hotel a lot on the blog, and that's really something that influences me. You mentioned chefs who influence. I have to shout out Fergus Henderson at St John. He recently came and one of his proteges has opened the Shed in Swansea. All right, I know Swansea, Cardiff, but he came and did a dinner there, and he was in residence, and it was incredible. He's like a food god, but he wrote the book literally on Nose Hotel cookery, and that using cheaper cuts and not being pigeonholed into things like fillet, because Dean's right, anyone can cook a fillet. Show me someone who can cook.
He was right. I loved that show. I loved that guy from last week. I did. Yeah.
Well, show me someone who can cook a shin or a tongue or a neck.
That's what he said, but it's true. It is true. But when you come from a menial background, and that's all they can cook with, they cook it really, really well.
Yeah, and so much of food that comes from necessity and practicality and like terroir, where you're from, that's like always the best food. Again, like French food was built on peasant food. And globally, anywhere that food comes from that, it's always the best. I mean, in any country, it's the same. I mean, things like pasta in Italy, that's food from poverty. That is food from nothing, flour or mortar. Soul food in America, that comes from a background of, we have nothing, this is what we're going to produce with it, and it always ends up being the best results. Even things like sushi. I mean, sushi was fishermen using what they have, and it's now considered this super high-end thing, which rightly it should do. But that comes from that necessity and from poverty, and actually it does always become the higher end stuff in the end.
I know, because it can be so delicious. And like you said, not everyone knows how to cook it because they don't know, they haven't cooked it. I was reading your blog and you were talking about different regions. You can be 10 minutes down the road and it can be so different.
That's something that I think the war affected this country in a lot of ways, and I think from a culinary standpoint, post World War II, obviously, people forget we had rationing until well into the 50s, I believe. So that affected how people think about food and how people cooked. You go to France, Italy, Spain, and half an hour down the road, the food will be very different.
That's crazy.
Really, I mean, I funny enough, I watched a documentary not too long ago with Nigel Slater, who's one of my favourite sort of writers and TV chefs, and he talked about this and how regions in Britain, you can really only see it, funnily enough, in things like cakes. So like down the West Country, you've got things like lardy cake, because it's a byproduct of the pig farming down there. And in Cornwall they have a thing called heather cake, and heather, I believe, is the Cornish word for fish, which it's made so that the women who were at the time in the kitchen cooking, the young men would stand on the cliffs and watch the fishermen, and when they shot heather, it means there's a shoal of fish, so the fishermen would go out. So the women in the kitchens would know, when they hear that, the men are going to be back soon. So then they make this cake so that it's done quickly.
I love that.
But that's really the only way you see that regional difference. And it's a shame. And I mean, I'm sure there's more of it, and I'm sure I've missed things, but I think it'd be nice to see that more here. But you really see it's really pronounced in countries like France, where you go to Burgundy, it's coq au vin, it's boeuf bourguignon, because it's wine country, that's where it comes from. You go to Normandy, there's orchards everywhere, so there's apples and cider in all of the food. Things like bouillabaisse, which is fisherman's stew, and it's considered super high-end, which it should do, it's delicious. But that is bycatch, that's fishermen using what they have, what they can't sell. And again, it always becomes the best food.
The thing,
it's crazy.
Because there's just so much a build-up of flavour with all those layers, isn't it? Yeah, delicious. I do believe we've run out of time, so before we wrap up, I have to mention your blog. I love the way you gave a step-by-step guide on how to prepare brine and cook a turkey for a stress-free Christmas lunch. So many people ruin the turkey, so it's usually dry, but your blog is bloody brilliant. Bohemien is storytelling through food with classic French techniques. It's about slowing down, relaxed but refined food that feels thoughtful without being intimidating. It's comfort and creativity meeting in the middle. Go experience it for yourself. You won't be disappointed. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you very much for having me.
I've loved every minute of the show.
Thank you.